confidential settings should never be shared. Unless a school board member is the official spokesperson for the board, she should not comment to the press about anything. Loose lips sink the ship is an old but valuable phrase to remember.
Okay.
It's a good one for us to read today as we prepare for the next steps for our interview process here. So that's a good one for today.
Well, thank you. Okay, moving on. We will start with the report of teaching and learning this evening.
Thank you so much. So I just want to say thank you for having us. I'm really excited to be here to talk about mathematics instruction at Washington School. Before I started in this role, I was supporting the district thinking about math. And so professionally, this is really exciting to actually get to do it in the classroom with the students. So I'm really happy to share our story with you. We've got some special guests joining us. So we've got some friends in the back. You'll get to meet them in a little bit. And we also have a teacher with us, Jeanette Buck. She's a math interventionist at Washington, and we're really happy to have her support this year. Can I introduce Glenda Juarez? She's our assistant principal. She's new to the role, and we're really grateful that she said yes. And I'm Gabrielle Devlin, the principal at Washington. Okay, I love a good timeline. So I just want to lay it out for you so you know that everything you're going to see today is related to things that have happened before, and it's connected to the future we have planned. So in the beginning, last year we had a math committee convene. They spent the whole year meeting and learning and growing about mathematics. And from that, we have some outcomes that we're going to be sharing with you. We purchased the new edition of a foundational math curriculum. We also did very specific training for our pilot group that's trying out some new math materials. We had whole staff math training. We began using common baseline assessments, and that data is what we're using to drive our discussions now that we have regularly as a team. I want to take you back. It's March 2024. Stephanie Drake stood in front of you and said, we noticed that our students aren't learning at the rate that we want, and we have a plan to address it. And so she shared some root cause analysis. And this plan that she shared has been the foundation of the steps we've taken and that we're going to be sharing with you now. So you can read these four. We'll be going over all of them in the presentation, but you should know that our focus is in the general education classrooms. That's tier 1 curriculum and instruction that every child will receive. The other thing they asked us to do is to look at data, which is deeply satisfying for me because that's where we can really make a change when we can target the students that need it most. And so I'll be discussing how we've addressed all of these. And in particular, I want you to notice we'll be talking about MTSS tiers. That's a term of art. It's a multi-tiered system of support. And you'll notice that as we go along. And I just don't want you to be surprised at some lingo for you. All of this is because we have a goal. I love a mission, and it's for 2026. So we've got 2 years to make sure that all of the students at Washington have met their student growth percentile. And notice the grades, it's 1 through 4. So anything we do now is going to pay off when those students are at MG in the future. And also, our second part of our goal is that the students with disabilities will make the same growth that the overall population is making. And the actions we're talking about today are leading us to this goal in 2 years.
So we're going to dive into what a multi-tier system of support is and what that looks like in a classroom and whole school setting. So if you look at the diagram here, we have a triangle. And so our multi-tiered system of support is broken down into what we call 3 tiers. So tier 1 is really the focus for 100% of our students in our classroom. So classroom teacher is really providing whole group instruction to all their students. However, the goal is that at least we're aiming so that 80% of our students can really reach those grade level expectations and meet those instructional needs. Tier 2, which is the one in yellow, is where we look at and dissect student data, and we really look at the 10 to 50% of students that really need to build on those skill sets. Maybe we need to hone into those strategies that they're learning in the classroom or step away from the whole group setting and go into small group instruction. Tier 3 is now going down even further. Now we're looking at 5% of students, which means that in this tier, we're definitely holding out in which students need maybe it's individual instruction or small group instruction. So we'll revisit each of these tiers. So moving into tier 1, What does that look like in the classroom? Well, for tier one of the goals that we identified last year was that we needed to increase the number of minutes that students are receiving math instruction. So in 23-24, students received 75 minutes of math instruction each day, which was a total of 375 minutes within 1 week. And this school year, we're increasing it to 95 minutes of math instruction, which is a total of 475 minutes. So we'll dive deeper into different components of the math instruction, but we identified that we needed to increase their instructional minutes as well as pilot math resources. What are the resources that we can use that can best build these skill sets for our students? So currently we are piloting 2 programs. So in this first half of the year, we have a math committee that's piloting Bridges Edition 3. The second half of the school year, our math committee will pilot Eureka Math Squared. And then at the end of the year, we'll present to the board what they think is the best fit. The other layer of our tier 1 instruction was that we also identified that we needed to ensure that all classrooms across all grade levels are using Number Corner, which Number Corner is like a 15 to 20 minute mini lesson that's taught by the teacher. And we wanted to make sure that that instruction was being done consistently in all classrooms and with fidelity. So in doing so, the math committee again reconvened and found that the best curriculum that would support the Number Corner needs was Bridges Edition 3. So currently, our classrooms are using Bridges Edition 2 to support math instruction. However, across the board, everyone's using Bridges Edition 3 for the Number Corner instruction. And so in order to support that, if we're going to bring in a new curriculum and expose that to our students and our teachers, we wanted to make sure that we were providing professional development to our teachers as well, which they are receiving throughout the year, as well as resources. So here on the last picture here shows a math kit that classroom teachers receive every month to support Number Corner instruction. And it has different components that they might need to carry out their lessons throughout the month. And then
yeah, so related to tier 1, we also learned that we need some more professional development, and we have been going at this every way that we can. I'm really excited to let you know that we sent a group of teachers to the National Math Conference. Luckily, it was in Chicago this year. And so we sent classroom teachers, math interventionists, also spent special education teachers because of our belief that all the school is going to work together to improve our goals. We have every other month, we have a math consultant who comes and meets with the whole staff, addressing topics related to math instruction. And about once a month, every 3 weeks or so, we meet as a grade level team and look at student data and analyze how the kids are doing and where we might want to make some changes, which is related to our next slide when we get into the root cause analysis related to driving instruction using data. So we're using a PLC style of a meeting where we regularly review student data on these math assessments. And we also offer support to the teacher so that they have more practice looking at the data. And we also coach them on how to make instructional choices related to what they learn. So this next slide will show you one of the asks that we have is that we would analyze our local assessment data in relationship to our STAR and IAR data, which would be like standardized state nationally normed tests. I have 2 samples here. This one would be, I took out the students' names. And then these would be the standards that we were assessing. And so by doing this, we can triangulate what we see here against what happened on a standardized test. But we can also disaggregate. So we can look to see maybe a particular student is having a tough time in this unit, or maybe the teacher needs to address how she or he is teaching that particular standard. And so this tool really powers the instructional choices we make. They're related to real-time things that we can measure in our student performance. Of course, we have standardized tests, which are valid and reliable in their own way. I just talked a lot about this slide because I love this slide and I love data. So sorry.
so we'll move away from data and
No, a little bit.
We'll come back to that later. So we'll move into tier 2. So as I previously mentioned, so tier 2 is where then now we focus at that 10 to 15% of our student population. What are the needs of these students and how can we meet their academic needs to give them that extra boost that they need? So in doing so, we needed to make sure that we're providing the support that they need. How do we do that? Well, one of the initiatives we have this year is that we integrated a math interventionist position at Washington, which is Miss Jeanette Fox. Can wait. So, and she's very vital in this process, because she is working consistently with all of our classroom teachers and looking at their data, looking at how students are doing in the classroom, what are their needs, and constantly engaging in teamwork and collaborative conversations, not only with like our teachers at Washington, but also with Mechanics Grove, because we do have a bilingual interventionist, I'm sorry, not bilingual, math interventionist, at Mechanics Grove. And so both Jeanette Bucks and Ms. Jenny Figueroa, who's our math interventionist at Mechanics Grove, are consistently coming together to talk about how our students progressing in kindergarten through 5th grade and how it's carrying over. And in doing so, we wanted to make sure as well that our interventionist is equipped with the resources and the manipulatives and everything that she needs to drive that instruction.
So this is a slide for tier 3, and this is the edge of our growth. This is where we're learning and building on our capacity. But once we started to look at the data, all sorts of patterns have evolved. And so we're beginning to analyze them and make decisions related to them. So we found some students were struggling with the standards for whatever reason, and we're addressing them when they come up. And so we're using Bridges intervention. It's a research-based intervention for students that need support in foundational mathematics standards. And we've also discovered some students that already feel secure in the concepts. And so when appropriate, we can challenge and enrich using concept quests. And it's a time to enrich them the concepts, to apply the standards they're already learning in their classroom to new applications, new contexts, more problem solving and creative thinking. And we're working together to increase our capacity in this place. But like I said, this time we first joined you, we're talking about our tier 1 instruction for everyone inside the school. And with that in mind, it's time for you to feel a little bit of the vibe of being a tier 1 student at Washington. We're gonna play a game. So the name of the game is Pick 2, Roll and Subtract Record Sheet. During our mathematics instruction, we often play games. Games are proven to support foundational mathematics skills because we know that when a student does something for an enjoyable, sustained time, that they learn it better. So anytime we're worried about foundational skills, we're gonna approach it through a fun-based place. And there's something I want you to know about, the next slide, please, shows you what I want you to know, is that Bridges is fully bilingual. All of the materials are in English and Spanish, and it includes sentence phrase. One of our beliefs in Washington is that math is a collaborative learning time. You don't do it alone with a worksheet, you do it with your friends. And so we have some friends to join us now, and they're gonna teach you how to play this game. All right, guys, this is your moment. 2 things, come on up and we're gonna find a grown-up to play with. Yeah, can they stand up and join us up here? Yeah.
Do you want to introduce them before they?
Okay, we have Mia, she's coming over here first. Can you grab all of your things?
All the things.
Yeah. And so Mia, why don't you come over here and meet Mr. Al and Ms. Emily, who we should use last names. Okay, Jason, why don't you come down here? I've got Mr. Billetier and Ms. Fingerhut. Hey, come on. Come on over here. Can you work with Mr. Ray? Come on over here, dear. You can come over here and work with Ms. Aguirre. What are we doing? Okay, buddy. You wanna come on this side? Come on over here. Look, right here.
So, do you mind if this like join you when you play these guys? These guys are gonna help
We get started.
But
Okay.
I'm gonna let Big explain to you how to play these.
Basically, you have to roll the dice.
Go ahead. Oh, here.
That number is gonna go, you're gonna choose the dice and whatever number.
Write that in here.
Subtract it
Good job, but we don't want to
and we already got all of these.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna work this way. Yeah.
Appearance.
Over here, you gotta write whose name.
You want to be player. Players. You're gonna be player. Okay, I like it.
All right, do you want to write your name? And I'll write my name and play your name. Write our name. Does that work?
And then, you can. Roll the dice.
Okay.
Next one, we added those together. And that equals 6. Okay.
Wow. And you might be the first sentence over there. Okay. 6.
It's easy.
We're consistent.
So since you're player one, do you want to go first? Okay.
Or next, or next.
It's your turn.
That's my turn, okay.
I never remember.
Yeah,
The line is on the nine.
Oh.
Six.
Yeah, that's right.
Mine is 5.
You know what?
Samantha,
Learn how to not. Everybody's.
Well, and also
Six.
the work would be up there. Yes. I think here, right?
All right, so pick two.
Now I rolled it.
Really good.
15 goes.
You'll take your hand and make sure it's there.
Okay.
I'll start with the answer now. 2.
We start by putting that here, right?
Four, that goes next.
Plus eight, right? And then now.
So,
On this
oh,
one.
I'm like, how did I come to 9 when they
This one,
split
I
that?
know, I appreciate
Because
it.
it might be 1 through 8 and so 9 down.
Need to go again?
That's easy.
Yeah, you made it, turned it into a 10.
I have to pick from the top, right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's over. There is a strategy called make a 10, and she likes that.
We're on, still have one, right?
I'm a double.
And eight. We're nominating, yeah, right? Six
That's a good job.
plus 8. I'm gonna do
Now.
so 6 and 6 is 12 and then 2 more.
Right?
And then you have this number goes here. Okay, now I'm gonna do the dice.
Thank you.
Let's see what I get. Okay, so now I'm doing 4, right? We are tied. Transfer that number. I have 10 and you have 10. Oh.
Practice.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
such a good.
Yeah.
All right, I don't. Cool.
So you do double -1.
I know.
Oh, that's cool. I don't even realize I'm using a strategy. It's really hard, right? This one's really cool. It's almost like the problem I just did, right? That's what he said.
Nice job. How did you figure out? What were you thinking? Uh-huh.
9.
Like put it off to the side, right? Yeah.
Take 2 from here. Take 2 from
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Number
Oh,
13 here.
Okay.
oh,
Minus.
right? So then I have 16 and then you said this goes here. Okay.
I see a really cool category of projections. Look at
4.
15. Wait, how times?
Should I try, I can round 2 on this?
You're always thinking the one.
Hard.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we're gonna get started. We start hitting round 2. Okay. All right, right. Cards.
Wow.
Is that too long?
I think I'll get an 8 again. Okay. Try doing that. Yeah.
Look at that. You want to recount this? Turned out to be the exact same numbers that were on the paper.
One.
I didn't see that.
Over there.
Yeah, what is
We
it?
found a really cool pattern in all the
Really?
subtractions. First we got 15 minus 5, and 16 minus 6, 18 minus 8.
Yes.
Minus 5? Yeah. Found a pattern.
So now we come again.
Okay. Do I get to do this round? No. Okay, good.
How do you decide to?
Okay, tell how we need.
Yeah, you got it. Oh, here we go. 7 and 5, regardless, that thing where the 5 and 9 left over. 5, volume 12.
Right?
Alright.
Yeah.
Really good. Hey,
Still have to do a little-
this here. All right.
Out of all.
Go for it. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so then what?
Okay, teammates, we're gonna finish maybe one more question, finish up that line you're on, make it even, so everyone had a turn. Second graders, can you show them how we find out who won? And then we're gonna, thank our partners and make our way back towards.
Wait a minute, this is great. We got that exact thing. No.
They had right, one right, not here.
Yes.
Wow.
We need.
Just here.
Yes, I know. Okay. We're going all the way.
I guess I don't know. I haven't-
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna wrap this up.
Thank you. They always do the math too. If I do
Teacher,
how
too.
to come one by.
Sorry, I think while I could go on to that, okay, so now we have to add the about
36. yeah.
The highest number.
Yeah. We were.
Okay. My friend.
It sounds really fun. They can teach me that kid.
52.
Fun way to do it.
It was an intense day.
Yeah, you ever teach it to your friends? No.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey Shane, what about your family? Talking about Squishmallow? Oh, okay. Sorry. Did I say that? Those are your cards from school? Well, thanks for bringing them. That was really fun today.
So our friends are wrapping up, they're heading back, and if you have any questions, I want to give you a chance to share any comments or any questions as they get themselves together.
Seems like they really enjoy it.
Yeah,
And it's an easy tool, it seems like, for them to learn.
yeah. If it's enjoyable and then it becomes sustained, which is where you become fluent, because you want to do it, you'll do it for longer. It's why people play video games. We're just trying to like hack it and have them talk.
They did an excellent job.
Yeah. It's clear that it's having an impact because Jason was just doing some great work there.
Yeah.
He was doing it faster than I was able to do it. Really good.
If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we're gonna get them out of here and take a photo and get them home. I think Zoe, the younger sibling, is like
Ready to go.
So we're gonna, before she's free.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you guys all coming and taking time out of your evening to spend with us and to show us what you guys do during your school day. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
You guys did a great job. Thank you so much.
Either tag out.
Put it in your home office.
Right.
Love it.
Okay, moving on, we're next gonna hear the report of the business office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Nice. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Parents.
Oh, good. No problem. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to follow the beautiful little kids and follow it with some very boring levy information, but I will try to keep you awake.
Equally important. Equally important.
Mathematician.
I guess. And I love all things levy, I will be honest. If we go to the next slide. So what is a levy? I'm just gonna go through a few of the items that you already know, but the levy by definition, it's a formal request by the district, and it must be sent to the county clerk prior to the last Tuesday in December. And what this document does is it actually sets the total amount that the district can at maximum raise its taxes for the 2024 levy year. Sorry.
Okay, apparently there's a trick, I don't know.
We have to leave it open.
Oh,
There.
oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, sorry, I guess.
So, oh,
Apparently.
yes. Would you like me to reopen it?
I'm sorry.
Reopen it.
I thought I was helping.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Sorry.
If we go to the next slide. So what does the levy do for us? Well, the levy's purpose is to access the funding that we need to enhance our programs for our students. It is the only revenue source that the district has that actually has a guaranteed increase from year to year to year. As opposed to state revenue, where they've said, like, for evidence-based funding, which is our second major source of revenue, that will stay flat from year to year and they will not decrease it. It does not always come with an increase from year to year. So when we're looking at our revenue as a whole, and especially when we're looking at how to gauge our expenditures and what percents to use, we should be looking at what's happening to the major source of revenue that we have. Because if that major source of revenue that supports all of our functions is going up 3% and our expenditures are going up 5%, that's gonna put us in a difficult situation. So again, the levy represents 64% of the district's overall revenue for its budget. And we're gonna be talking tonight about several different things. The aggregate levy, the debt service levy, we'll be talking a little bit about property tax extension limitation law, which I fondly refer to as PTEL. And we'll also be talking about consumer price index or CPI. We go to the next slide. So what we're doing tonight is we're actually preparing the estimate for the board's approval. And the law requires that the board actually publish the estimate, and then no less than 20 days later, it is allowed to actually adopt that estimate, which is why we have today where we're going through the estimate. And then we have our levy hearing coming up in November, on November 19th, and that is more than 20 days from today. So in conjunction with the law, we're meeting those requirements by having it more than 20 days after. Now, the law also states that we have to have a truth and taxation hearing if our levy is estimated to go up 5% or more. Now, the district's levy is not anticipated to go up more than 5%. However, past practice has always been that we still hold a levy hearing, even though it's not going up the full 5%, and we still process all of the notices and so forth, just to maintain transparency with our community and give them the opportunity to still comment.
Kind of confused by the 5% truth in taxation, because if the limit is 5%, is there ever, I mean, you can't go over 5%. So is there ever a time where there needs to be truth in taxation because we went over? I thought it was capped at 5.
Oh, so yes, we'll talk about that in just a second, because we'll talk about we balloon our levies. And there are times when you need more than 5%. If, for instance, you have higher new growth in your district, which D75 doesn't, but D120 does have a lot more growth. And you have to factor that into your ballooned levy, which we're going to talk about in just a few seconds.
But I think I think he's confusing the 5% CPI cap with, because it says
Oh,
the
the
lower
5%
of.
CPI cap versus the 5% truth and taxation cap. Those are two different things, but correlate.
Okay.
They're the same number. And then finally, the district must submit its estimation and its final documents to the county no later than the last Tuesday in December. We go to the next slide. The components of a levy are there's several components, actually. We have our rate limits that have to be taken into account. So for our example, we're only allowed 50 cents for our operations and maintenance funds. So there are different rate limits that have to be taken into account. You look at your prior year's extension, which we know that information. Consumer price index, we know that as well, because that is set the January prior. So we know that to be 3.4%. But the rest of the factors that make up our levy calculation, new property and EAV, and these have a significant impact on your rate as a whole, those will be unknown until the spring. Okay, and so if we go to the next slide, when you're looking at your EAV as a whole, they're going to take into account not only your assessed valuation or the value of your property, but they're also going to factor in a county equalizer. They're going to factor in exemptions. So for example, you may have a senior exemption, or you may have a veterans exemption or a homestead exemption, but those exemptions are all factored in, as well as impacts on our TIFs, which could be either coming in or dropping off. All of those things go into figuring out the total EAV for the district. If we go to the next slide. And then what we do is we're allowed to increase it, like I said, by CPI or 5%. The interesting thing is the tax cap law was put into place in the 90s. And the first time we have ever enacted the tax cap law was the last 2 years, 22 and 23 is the first time school districts have ever been able to enact that 5% cap. And as we know, CPI actually increased 7% that year and 6.5% the following year, which means our expenditures went up probably 7%, but our major source of revenue only went up 5%. So that is also factored into some of the reasons you may see budget issues coming into future years as well. So this year we're looking at a 3.4%. And if you think about what CPI is, it's basically the cost of bread from year to year. If bread goes up, you know that you're going to pay a little bit more from year to year for bread. Well, pencils cost more, Chromebooks cost more, those kinds of things. So we use CPI to determine that rate. We go to the next slide. So tax increment financing right now, Mundelein District 75 has 2 TIFs within its boundaries. Both TIFs are set to expire 2040. So they will not be coming off or going on anytime soon, but we do have 2 districts. And what that means, or 2 TIFs within our district, and what that means is we are only allowed to capture taxes on that base EAV from the time the TIF was put into place. So even though the value of these properties are going up, we're not allowed to access that tax base until the TIF expires in 2040, at which time we will be able to access that tax base. We go to the next slide. So in order to figure out your current year taxes, you look at your last year's taxes. So the law says we're allowed to get what we received last year. So if we received $1 million last year, we receive $1 million this year, and then we get CPI on top of that, which we know to be 3.4%. So the law says we get $1 million plus 3.4%, but then there's a little caveat that says also you get any new property. So if some new homes were built, you get the tax income from that new property, and that is all put together to figure out the current year taxes that we will be extending. We go to the next slide. So it's actually an algebraic formula to figure out the district's rate. We end up figuring out the EAV for the district, which we just talked about, all of the factors that go into that. And what we do is that last amount, which we figured out the total extension, that total extension is divided by the assessed property, and that is what gives us our total tax rate. So when we say that we put a little cushion in, because if something changes with your EAV, that will change your tax rate and can change the figures and put the district in a place where we maybe couldn't capture all of the funds that we should be capturing. And that is a little bit more identified on one of the last slides that we have. We go to the next slide. So when we're looking at our proposed levy, we put in a little bit of a safeguard and we end up with the final extension, but the final extension will be scrubbed of all of the ballooning, in other words. So you will approve our proposed levy in December, and in the spring, when we know the EAV and when we know the new property, the county lets us know, okay, based on your actual data, this is the maximum amount you can receive. And that is the only amount that we can actually capture. So even though you may be approving a levy extension that's higher than anticipated, the law will still cap us at what the law will cap us at, if that makes sense. We go to the next slide. So when we're looking at the unknowns, we have our variance with projected EAV. For example, EAV, I just got a notice today, a new EAV sheet from the county. So all of the documents that you have in your board packets are now changing because today I received new EAV. Again, that's a reason why we put these safeguards in here for those changes. We also have variance on the new property. They're estimating what new property is going to be, but they don't know what that's going to be and won't know that till the spring. And finally, if we have maybe TIF districts that come on or come off, that can impact things between now and then. If they were to shut down the TIF, which I don't even know if they can technically do that, but if they were to just shut it down today, that would impact all of our figures as well. So if we go to the next slide. So when I talk about last year's extension, this is our last year's extension. Last year, we received almost $18 million. Next year, we're anticipating we will only be able to capture 18.5 or $18.6 million. But tonight, and at the tax hearing, we're asking you to approve 18.8, the small ballooned levy. So if you look at it, our levy request is going up 4.9%. That is our ballooned levy divided by your last year's extension. And what we actually estimate we will receive is more like 3.54. So we're asking for about $889,000 extension increase, but we only anticipate we'll receive $635,000. The water cooler talk you can take away from this also is this part here, because this is important. Our bond and interest levy is actually going down next year. So our bond and interest levy is actually going to provide a little bit relief. So while we're going to be capturing 3.54% of new taxes, because the bond levy is going down, they should only see an impact on their tax bill of more like 1.67%, if that makes sense. Go to the next slide. We have in your packet a new document. This is our supplemental levy. The District 75, if you're like, hey, I don't recall T ever talking about a supplemental levy, that is because we've never had supplemental levy. This is new for us. And this is a levy that happens as a result of when your debt service extension base is lower than the amount that you have to pay for your bonds. So I'll explain what that means. If you think about it as you go to your mortgage broker and your mortgage broker says you are approved for a $3,000 mortgage, and you're like, sweet, thank you. And you get all done with the whole thing and your mortgage thing comes in and it's going to be $3,100 a month. You're approved for $3,000, but your payment's going to be $3,100. What happens to that $100? That's what we're talking about, is that $100. What we're doing and what we can do is basically, if you think about it this way, you say, okay, well, for the first 12 months, I'm gonna pay for all that, each of those $100 payments out of my savings account, right? And then I'm gonna refinance in a couple years and I'm gonna put that money back in my savings account. Does that make sense? That's in essence what we're trying to do here. We're saying we're gonna we have paid for our supplemental levy already with our capitalized interest. So all of our bonds, we get interest income on the cash that we have in the bank. And that interest income we have used to pay that extra $100. What this document does is gives the district the ability in a future year, if we want to, we can refinance basically and say, okay, I got to put that money back in my savings account. That $1,200 that I paid, and I paid for it out of my pocket, I need to put that back in my savings account. And so then what you do is you levy for that amount in a later year and reimburse yourself for what you paid. I'm gonna let that sink in because I talk fast. I know I do, but I'm trying to put it in like normal everyday terms that maybe will help connect what a supplemental levy is. So tonight, we're not asking you to necessarily say we are levying against taxpayers. Number one, we're asking you to approve that we take this to the next board meeting. And then at the next board meeting, we will be giving ourselves the ability to do these, the levy in future dates, but not necessarily, you are not setting in stone, it's happening. This is being done also at the recommendation of both bond counsel and our investment counsel, again, just to keep our options open. We have paid for it with interest income, and if in 2 or 3 years, the board decides, you know what? We have plenty of interest income, that's how we want to keep it, we can do that, okay? This is a new chart in your levy document for this year. This new chart is required based on 2 things, actually. We have board policy 410, and we also have that there's a new law that says the district must post its available cash balances in each fund when it presents its levy. So that is what we're doing. This is an estimated cash balance, and the difficulty here is that this is all 2026 estimated figures. We're not even a quarter of the way done with 2025. So we have to do our best to estimate these figures, but we basically take the ending balance as of the end of FY 24. We take the FY 25 budget impact on that, and then we take the impact that we're estimating from whatever revenue and expense we have coming into 26 to give us an estimated final balance. So you may be asking, well, there's a negative. How does that happen? Well, that is our debt service fund. And the debt service fund will have times where it takes in money in different time periods than we actually pay it. Because again, we're paying the bills now that we're levying for next year, actually. So there are timing differences that can cause this. This will not be negative by the end of FY 26. I don't believe it will be. I believe interest income and everything will keep it positive, but that can happen with just fluctuations. And policy 4:10 says that the board or the district will present the board and let the board know if its cash balance is higher than 250% of its expenditures, which we are at 56%. If we were at 250% of our expenditures, which means if we had cash balance of basically our expenditures times 2.5, so about what, 100, if we had $100 million in the cash, basically, then we would have to mitigate it and start saying, okay, we need to spend this down. We need to do something because you shouldn't have that much money in cash just sitting there. So that is the new sheet. We're at 56%, which is well below that 2.5 threshold. We go to the next slide. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
So some of the discussion, we had the finance committee, there was a number of 9% decrease.
Okay,
Yeah, the tax was going down our tax was going down 9%.
the rates,
Right.
correct.
But then there was an increase of 3%.
Okay,
Is that the CPI?
we still have a 9% decrease in our total tax rate. That didn't go away.
One of the numbers you were showing up there was that there's an increase of 3% somewhere.
Let's go back to the slide so I can reference what we,
I think it's the overview and conclusion page. That's got the.
oh, the 3%. So yes. So yeah, if you go back, I think the one that has the arrows,
Yeah.
yes, this one. Nope, down one, up one. There we go. There we go. This one with the 3%. So at the finance committee, we talked about that we were asking for the 5, but we don't anticipate we'll receive the full 5. We will only anticipate we'll receive 3.5.
So what does that 9% do then?
The 9%. So it's very confusing when you try to look at your tax rate as a whole and just say, well, my tax rate's going down or my tax rate's going up, so my tax bill should be going down or going up. With your tax rate going down, that doesn't mean that your tax bill is going down. That just means that the district's overall EAV went up so high that it brought down the tax rate. It doesn't change how much the district receives. I know that's
So
very
if one-
confusing.
If one goes up, the other one goes down.
Correct. It's an inverse relationship.
Right.
And then what we did to try to, I guess, give you guys a little bit of an ability to have water cooler talk with your neighbors, because I'm sure your neighbors are like, hey, my blue card came in the mail. And my blue card says I'm going up 14%. So that means my tax bill's going up 14%. And you're gonna be like, no, it's not. This document that we have put in your folders is a one-page front and back document that you can give that helps explain what happens if, and we actually used the scenarios from the estimations from this year. So overall, blue cards are estimated to increase 12% this year, which is why we chose 12% in the example. And so we actually show what happens to the individual household and how your house value does not change how much you're paying per se. It's the rate and what's happening to the overall EAV in your area. So what we did in this document is we created a 2-house city, just 2 houses in the city, so we could easily show if this house goes up and this house goes down, this is what happens to your taxes. And then it shows that under every scenario, the district still receives the exact same amount of money. So in scenario 1, where taxpayer A may be paying $2,500 more and taxpayer B is paying $600 less, and then in scenario 2, where there are different numbers, the district as a whole still only receives $1 figure, and it's the same dollar figure. And that's important to know because people say, again, my house value is going up. And so it's that in conjunction. So like if your neighbor fights their tax bill and gets their tax bill reduced, the district doesn't receive any less funds. What happens is the neighbors now pay that bill.
Anna, can you leave that up though for a second? That one that you just had up? Cause I wanted you to finish your thought and then I wanted to. Because I met with T and Kathy to get more detail on the questions that I asked, that all of you had the opportunity to see in the documents from our packet. So and I pulled out my tax bill in order to try to put some of this into realities, because every year we see all these numbers, and I wanted to be able to truly understand it so that, again, we can explain it to neighbors or whomever, because we know that these issues are on everybody's mind. So I think that the piece that they put, the piece of paper they put in here is helpful, and it's from the packet that was in our packet. But I think it's almost, in my mind, I don't know that it totally helps me, because I think it almost oversimplifies it and it makes it hard for people to really still put it into, they really think about it, it makes sense. But I think one of the ways to look at this is on this sheet. So the 2023 levy here on the bottom. So if you look at your tax bill, and you can invite neighbors to do so if they ask, they will see, although I think on mine it was instead of 4.537, I think it was 4.55. But either way, let's just say for the sake of this discussion, so it's 4.55. That's the District 75 line item. When I looked at my total tax bill, the total of those numbers was like 10.62. So everybody's who are in the District 75 should be about that same, because you've got the district, the library, all the different things that add up. We are only one line item. So ours was the 4.537. So when you look at that got and I don't remember what the total number of the entire District 75, all of the properties in District 75, let's say they added up to 65 million, whatever it is, they applied that tax rate and got that $20 million that then came into District 75, that 20,445,000. What this is showing is that if we assume all the estimated stuff goes into, not the balloon extension, skip over that for a second, but if we go to the actual, what we anticipate getting from the estimated extension, we will end up with 20,380,000, which is slightly higher than what was last year. But because it's still applied to the same, in my example, let's say it's 65 million is District 75's property values all added up. It causes the rate to go down from last year 4.53 to this next year. If the estimate works out to be true, it'll be 4.1. So technically the rate is going to go down, and it is giving more money to the district based on that difference being CPI. That's pretty much the only difference that
and the house values going up.
Yeah.
So the house values increasing is what has created this rate drop, both for the balloon and for this. Is because all the houses went up 12%, but that doesn't mean we get more money. The only thing we get more money on is last year's money plus CPI. So when all those house values go up 12%, it just brings down your rate. It doesn't give you more money. It just changes the rate as a whole.
Right. And the one way to look at that is when people, if you have neighbors in Libertyville who pull out their tax bill, they're going to show perhaps a smaller, like if the total in ours is 10.62, theirs might be let's just say 7.4, but because their property values are higher, their tax, the money that's levied is going to be higher. That doesn't mean they're doing something better in their district such that their rate is lower. It just means their property values are higher and it's the same. But that's the thing to keep in mind when people are anxious about yes, because your value went up by 9%. When we levy tax, we don't just say, we want 4.5% of whatever your value is. It's not a flat fixed piece. The levy is what's the stable piece, and then it turns into a rate that gets applied. So it will result in a slight decrease in the rate, but because the values go up, then, it is going to increase, but certainly not by the 9% equalization factor that everyone's property on their blue card went up by at least 9%, because that's what the township equalized. So theoretically, everybody went up, should have gone up unless they did a reassessment or whatever by that same at least 9%, or could have been 12, 14. But that doesn't mean they're suddenly going to pay that flat 14% higher, because ultimately across District 75, this is what we're asking and putting in the levy, and then that turns into a rate in the end. But also to keep in mind from the District 75, I think it's helpful to keep that perspective in mind of that total 10.62, 4.5 of it is ours. That is a big, I think it's the largest number of all of the other line items, but it is not as though we make up even half of it. I mean, it is only one part of it. And, again, I'm trying to make sure this is all complicated stuff, not because T and Kathy made it complicated. It's just the way that it's all created and put together. You'd think it would be so much easier, but this is how our state funds education. So here we are, and I think it's confusing on purpose. And what it ends up doing is trying to pit all these different taxing districts against each other, whether it's the village, the library board, the forest preserve, the everybody, because of course, if everybody wants an increase, yes, that's going to increase that bottom line. But this is how we fund, keep the lights on. And I know we talked about the supplemental levy. Essentially tonight, we'll be voting on posting what we think the ask is going to be. It'll be finalized before the next one, and then we'll have that hearing and then actually vote on it to adopt it. And so we'll have some more specifics between now and then. Some of the questions that I asked, I think there's going to be still some answers coming on some of those by the next time, but yeah.
Will the supplemental tax levy be included in the hearing?
Yes, we'll be talking about it all as one cohesive conversation.
I think if I remember correctly, it all shows up as one,
The District 75 line item is all.
even with the supplemental levy.
It would be, yep.
And of that 12 million, whatever, we're talking about approximately,
1.7 million or 1.8 million, I think.
Well, that's the total,
Of the
debt service, but that supplemental levy piece makes up only
about $100,000 or so.
So it's a much smaller piece of that pie. Which again, over the course of every District 75 household is a very small, the supplemental piece of it is a very small.
Very, very
Since that'd be like pennies per thing. That's not the point, but it's a matter of if we don't ask for the ability to do it, we can't then, even if whether it comes up in 2 years or 4 years, that we actually need to enact it, we will have to essentially pass the resolution every year to give us the option of doing it based on our full budget.
Can you tell us again why we've never done the supplemental levy in the past?
Because we have never had our DSEB exceed, or our payments exceed our DSEB. But we knew when we did the 2023 levy that we were gonna pay for a certain portion out of our tax or out of our interest income. And that's what this is. It only is gonna amount to about $300,000 as a whole.
But the answer is, it's because we issued the bonds to pay for the project that we're doing it.
Yeah.
That's why we've never gotten even close to our limits, because we didn't, that's why we're suddenly now at our limit. And we're needing to plan accordingly because we're so close to our limit that we've never been at the limit before, but that's because we are doing a specific project, which they did put. Basically, for these couple of years, we're gonna be really close or basically just over the limit, which is why we have to essentially pay for a little bit out of our savings. But once in a couple of years, when all of the older bonds
Come on.
are paid off, then we're gonna be well underneath our limits again. So it's just these couple of years. So that, and I recall, and that was part of the questions I was asking. I do recall her, explaining to us, we're gonna be using some of our savings to do this for a couple of years rather than needing to exceed our, go to referendum or exceed this to do this. But basically, we're just living on the edge for those couple of years until those old debts are paid off. And then the new ones will be well underneath our limit, that it shouldn't be an issue. But if we're able to levy at the full amount, then we can sort of pay our savings back for that difference in a couple of years and we hit that. So
Well said. Well, if no one has, if any other questions, thank you very much. And I am available. I met with Christy today to go through some levy things. If you have any questions about your tax bill as a whole, give me a call. I'm happy to go through them. Budget count. Yes, I forgot about that. I apologize. And the next item on your agenda is the budget calendar that we are asking for approval tonight. You can just pull that up. So school code requires the board actually develop an annual budget and a calendar. And we're asking the board to approve the 2025-2026 budget calendar as presented.
And now the calendar you're presenting is more accelerated than one that D75 has usually done in the past, but we're doing that to move it up to more match our fiscal year and also the D120 to kind of keep it in line with one another, correct?
Yep, we're trying to align the two.
But that, to me, this makes more sense because it looks like then we would adopt our budget before the school year starts or right around when the school year starts, rather than waiting and doing it 3 months later like we typically have been on our
Well,
previous.
actually, District 75 has always approved its budget before June 30th. This was the only year since I've been here that we've ever approved it after June
Okay.
30th. But yes, we did that this year because we were aligning with the high school. Now we're trying to get both the high school and
Okay.
D75 on that same.
Thank you for clarifying. I knew there was
schedule. Yeah.
a reason, but okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, next we'll hear from the Human Resources.
Good news, everybody. Mine's not nearly as complicated. So for your consideration and review, I have an update to the East District Office Receptionist job description. This position was last updated in 2022. At that time, we identified what we thought the role could be. Since then, we've had 2 years to better understand what we need the role needs to meet the demands of the building. So what you see is updates to qualifications and some of the duties to better reflect what is occurring this day.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from the Superintendent's Office.
Good evening. We have 2 things to cover tonight. The first is the Resolutions Committee. At the last meeting, you voted to have Christy be the representative for III when you go into the resolutions meeting. And I believe tonight you have some other points to discuss in terms of how you plan on voting.
Sure. So I know that we were sent, all of us, we all received by email from Dr. Meyer's office, the resolutions report, which was also then placed into this into this packet that we got as well, just as a reminder. And as we've done this before, there are, I believe 10 different, there's one constitutional amendment, which we haven't had in the last few years. And then there are essentially, there's some 10 with some subparts. So a total of 10, resolutions that they've put out there. When all school boards have the opportunity every year to submit proposed resolutions by a particular date, then the resolutions committee of IASB gets together and discuss them, and they make a recommendation, which is contained in this packet and in this report, as to what they are recommending, whether they generally, if they're recommending that they adopt numbers 1 through 6, they put those on essentially a consent agenda, and at the delegation, they ask to do that. Now, naturally, a lot of the times, some people will pull things off the consent agenda, so we usually end up talking about all of them individually anyway, but that's the idea, and to try to streamline it and get it going forward. They have all the rationale for why they recommended that they be adopted in the packet. They all have reasons and rationales and sometimes very individual reasons for each district, why they've put things forth and why they want this to do. As a reminder, this is not actually legislation. This is not saying that even if we adopt this, all these things will happen. This is basically saying we, as all the school boards or the, however many delegates are actually at the convention that vote on it, are basically voting to direct IASB to spend their legislative budget on lobbying and how they're going to do things. So this is trying to direct the resources as the delegates and each school board has dictated. So sometimes there's press on them and people get a little antsy thinking that we've adopted or passed something because we have voted or whatever, but this is basically just directing their legislative dollars. So that's something to keep in mind. As far as I've gone through all of them, and I am in, unless anybody has a particular reason that we can discuss and go through, I am inclined to follow the recommendations of the resolution committee and vote accordingly. I didn't see a reason to vary from what they've got on there. There were basically 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all ones that the resolutions committee have recommended not to adopt or even bring forth the ones that they've adopted on there are ones that they don't even recommend adopting and moving forward. And then there were a few of them that won't even be discussed at the committee convention unless each of those districts follow a certain appeals thing, and that they've done all of the work ahead of time. It could be brought up and discussed. But the rationale that they have put forth in the packet makes sense to me why they were not. 2 of the 3 that were not even recommended to be put up, one of which is one of our neighboring districts, is because they're essentially requests for constitutional amendments, which that's not what this is. This is for resolutions. So these 2 of them, they have said we're not even bringing them up because they're not resolutions. They're actually proposals for constitution amendments, and there's a process to do that, and this is not that. So that's.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I think there were 2 of them that had to go to the board of directors, so they sent them to the board of directors.
That's what this packet says. I don't have independent knowledge of that, but it says that they have sent it on, and then I think the board of directors has to decide when and how to bring forth. And as you see, one of the things that's in this one that was probably previously put forth at the board of directors, and they have put it out here as a proposed constitutional amendment having to do with parliamentary practice. Basically, they want it, instead of using the old Robert's Rules of Orders, they want to do the revised ones. And if there's a conflict, it's addressing how to address the conflict if there happens to be a conflict between a resolution and federal and state constitutions. Well, clearly those are gonna apply. So I see no reason to go against what they're recommending as the constitutional amendment. And I would suppose I don't know what those procedures are, but there would be other procedures to put out before those other pieces become part of next year's resolution as a constitutional amendment. But because they're not actually resolutions, and unless they file an appeal, they're not up for us to discuss anyway. And if they do, I'm inclined, then we can deal with those at the time. But I didn't see any reason to vary from what the recommendations were because a lot of them seemed to make sense, you know, one talking about, you know, TIF district accountability, one talking about the, coming up with a way, because one of the big things that we talked about before was this faiths law was one of these laws that got enacted that I think we've talked about too, that the districts have to vet certain employees or potential employees in a certain way before they can hire them, but they didn't really give a way to do this and how to do this. And that's been a big complaint because a lot of districts then have to spend money, you know, doing a bunch of background checks or doing stuff that they, so they're trying to address some of the concerns that they have. So the dual language, the EBF authorized charter school funding, the TIF districts, the faith law, healthcare coverage, and polling place amendment to a position, which basically says they want to allow that if a school district is not a polling place, they shouldn't have to be closed on election day pursuant to state law. So they're trying to argue that the lobbyists should go and ask the legislators to change that because it's not a safety issue if the kids are not impacted, if it's not a polling place. You know, all of those made sense to me. Did anyone have any reason to go against what the resolution committee had recommended?
Pretty straightforward.
Okay. So as your delegate, that's what I will do unless, you know, I will deal with it then later. Okay.
Great.
Thank
Okay, that one's resolved. Wonderful. And then the second item tonight is related to press policy 116. And tonight is the second and final reading for that one. We talked about this briefly last month as well. This is related to Title IX, where Shane and Jamie are our respective complaint managers, and we also already conducted the training. So I also attended that training, so now I can investigate should we need a third investigator. And then the other press item is 5310. And that one, we also talked about at a previous meeting, and it was, we were going to amend it so that our contract language matches our press policy. Yes.
It's not the contract language because
sorry.
this is actually not part of our bargaining agreement. This applies only to educational support personnel.
Oh, thank you.
So it has nothing
It
to
is
do with
not
our
in
bargaining contract. This is trying to align
Our
the policy that 75 has to align with the policy of 120, to change the comp time that's allowed to be banked essentially by an educational support employee, which is not our teachers. That they can, instead of being able to bank 240 hours, they can only bank up to 75. And what we were told last time, which I imagine still remains, is that this is just aligning to what our current practice is that no one's banking up this time anyway.
Right.
And we don't want to come to a point where somebody is suddenly banking because then it's a burden on the district to have to replace or put in subs or whatever for the people if they wanted to take all 240 hours that they had
Yes,
pumped up.
thank you. Any questions on that one? Okay. Well, on a side note, it was so fun to see the second graders come tonight because I love seeing them as mathematicians. We've talked a lot about literacy the last few years, which is also super important, and we're keeping that at the forefront. But being able to start working on our math skills is also great to see. So thank you so much for playing some games with them.
Okay. So now we're gonna move on to our committee updates. Now we're starting with policy. So I guess the first, I know there was a confusion with the packet and Anna sent out I sent out an email with the details, and then she also sent out the follow-up email that's because inadvertently the wrong section was put into the packet, but we had talked about it last because we plowed through 2 sections last month. And we talked about how everybody would read the section on board meeting process. So that we didn't necessarily have to have somebody report on that tonight. I'm hoping everybody had a chance. I mean, you all participate in board meetings. I think you generally understand how they run, and how they go together. So that's part of why we didn't have, decide to have somebody report on that whole thing, because it, with all of the exhibits attached, it basically made up what would have been an entire section all on its own. So, I don't know that we need to spend time going through that, since we get the packet and see the procedure and we live it every single month. I really think that the other 4 sections, or 5 sections, excuse me, a lot of them are self-explanatory, again, stuff that we have gone through with public, Eric, do you want to start with public participation at board meetings?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I have policy 230, public participation at board meetings and petitions to the board. The main purpose of this policy is to set forth the opportunity and the guidelines for members of the public body to speak at board meetings. It sets forth specific times for when those comments are made. It identifies time limits, being 60 minutes total and 3 minutes per person. But it also gives authority to the president to increase the amount of time that one person can speak, and it also gives authority to the full board to increase the total duration that they can speak for with a majority of vote. Let's see. It also grants board authority to shorten the speaking time and give a max number of people an opportunity to speak. It also advises that if there's more than one community member that's speaking on the same topic, that they should appoint like a spokesperson to speak on behalf of everybody. It says that everybody should be respectful and civil towards everybody during this. And it also allows for petitions or written correspondences to be added to future board packets if a community member brings it to a meeting.
I think these are good things to keep in mind, obviously, since we rarely have people attend to speak to us, but if it does happen, it would tend to happen on items that could draw a lot of people at once, which is why it's helpful to have policies in place like this, so that we could choose as a board, like if we had an hour allotted pursuant to our policy to do open comments, or citizen comments at the beginning, we wouldn't want to be here until midnight doing our actual business because we were spending hours and hours on doing so. However, if we as a board felt that that was important, we could all extend, hey, we're gonna vote, not have it be 60 minutes, we're gonna make it 2 hours, whatever, if we felt the need to do so. Otherwise, we go with our policy and just say we're limiting it to 60 minutes and here's where we're at. So, but we do have a 3-minute limit, but sometimes, and I think we've all seen it in the past, occasionally, if we only have 2 or 3 people here to speak, they're clearly not going to get anywhere close to our 3-minute or 60-minute limit. If we decide to give them 5 minutes instead of 3 minutes, just to make them feel heard and to actually hear what they have to be saying, this allows the president to say, go ahead, speak for 5 minutes instead, especially if we know we don't have 60 people waiting in the wings. So I think it makes sense, but everyone's generally seen how that is. And then board policy development 240. That one's me. So obviously we have the policies. We now go over them on a biannual basis that we finish all of them. Since we've moved from a 1 year to 2 years to do that. Clearly anybody can propose new policies or changes to existing policies or even deleting them. The fact that we have the Press Plus and we do go through that quarterly, it gives us the opportunity to make those changes and do that. And as we've seen, as one of them, that Sarah just talked about, that's on the agenda tonight, that's not one that's built into Press Plus. That's a requested change that the superintendent is asking for us to change to align with current practices. So obviously that was an example, but if any board member had a particular, we would just have to follow the rule setting forth, and we can make suggestions, but we don't do them on the fly. We'd still have to put it on the agenda, do that, and then adopt it. But that's part of why we can, when superintendent brought that up, the last time, we wanted everybody to kind of talk about it, have a chance to ask questions about it, think about it, and then we moved it to put on to today's agenda so that we weren't doing it all at once. So, that's how we've done that. And then, we say that any policies or policy revisions are not going to be adopted at the first meeting they're introduced unless it's in a, it's an appropriate consent agenda. If there's no, discussion required, it's necessary and prudent in order to meet emergency or special condition or to be legally compliant. So if we're out of compliance, we don't have to wait and stay out of compliance for 2 months while we put it on the next agenda. We can certainly do that. That is an option. And then, and further, the board could decide that they want to have further opportunity for community input before, adopting it or changing it. So, clearly it says the policies are available for inspection at the public office during business hours. It's also available on our website online, as I sent you all the link to remind you of that, just to see that sections. So it was a good opportunity to see that. So anybody can look at those at any point in time. And it says we will periodically review that. Now, we have opted to periodically review those at every single meeting now, rather than just doing it once or twice a year with a really long meeting or section on it. So. And then it just authorizes that the board will support any reasonable interpretation made by the superintendent. And it talks about if reasonable minds differ, how we can resolve those conflicts. And the board also, by a majority of vote of the members present at any meeting, can temporarily suspend a particular policy, except those that are controlled by law or contract. So obviously we can't go supersede the bargaining agreement, but it's all very clear and set forth there. So Emily's got access to district public record.
Yeah, so 220 or 250 public records. There's a very long definition, but it includes records, reports, books, electronic communication, etc. They can be requested from the district's FOIA officer in writing, and this must be replied to within writing in 5 business days. The person requesting the public records is responsible for the fees within reason. And then there's some very specific records that need to be preserved and cataloged. And those are all specifically outlined in the policy. Typically having to do with history of the district and other things that are required by law.
And then those usually end up making it into or those do make it then when these FOIA requests are responded to, those usually make it into our packet. So that we're aware of that when they go out. Al speaking on the uniform grievance procedure of 260.
Yep. I'll read the definition in the front because it's in bold. It's grievances brought pursuant to the contractual agreement between the Mundelein Elementary Education Association, IEA, NEA, and Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75, Lake County, shall be presented in accordance with the items and procedures set forth in the contractual agreement. A lot of what it is, it's if there's a violation of a lot of the titles, Title II, Title IX, discrimination or harassment. There's a whole list of what can be grieved, sexual harassment, civil rights, state officials, employees, ethics, equal pay, whistleblower act, misuse of genetic information. The complaint managers will hear them if they are filed with them, and our 2 complaint managers are back here, Sarah and Shane. They do not necessarily have to file with them, but they do have other remedies that they can use. It has to do with student, parents or guardians, employees, community members. They can all file a grievance. There can be a hearing for them. Other remedies that they can pursue would be to try to resolve it prior to having any kind of meeting. There are certain deadlines that have to be met. The complaint investigation process is the complaint manager investigating or appointing a qualified person to handle the investigation. There is the identity of any student witnesses will be kept private. We do not want to put somebody on the spot, basically, and throw them under the bus. And there is within 5 school business days after receiving the complaint manager's report, superintendent can issue a written decision, which will be sent by registered mail, return receipt, and or personal delivery to the complainant, the accused, and the complaint manager. All decisions shall be based upon the preponderance of evidence. Within 10 business days, after receiving the decision, the complainant or the accused may appeal the decision to the board, making a written request. Within 30 school business days after an appeal of the superintendent's decision, the board shall affirm, reverse, or amend the superintendent's decision or direct the superintendent to gather additional information. The board has the ability to extend the time frame if necessary. Complaints that contain allegations involving the superintendent or board member within 30 days of the business day after receiving the investigative report, board shall issue a written decision. So a lot of this is just the process of filing a grievance and following the steps so that you are legally pursuing.
So that we have our policies made clear and everybody who may want to do it knows what the policy is and how to do it and what the timeframes are, so there are no surprises or changes. I thought one interesting thing is that it specifically mentions that if the complaint has allegations involving either the superintendent or board members, the written report goes directly to the board, who makes a decision according, to this, so that.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to kick that board member out temporarily. I mean, put them out while there's discussion, but.
Right, but at least if the complaint was against the superintendent, it's not that it stays with the superintendent, the superintendent decides, it then goes directly.
Then it goes to the board.
But hopefully, these are things we don't have to see often.
And like I said, our complaint managers are Shane and Sarah, and our non-discrimination coordinator is Shane.
Moving on with Georgie to 265, the Title IX grievance procedure.
Very similar. There's like a 3-step process. We make a report. There's a process in reviewing the report and the complaint. And then what I kept seeing was clear and convincing evidence. It's very, very detailed, like 12 steps in terms of what it's going to look like. That included a prompt time frame, describing the possibility of disciplinary remedies, and again, with the evidence. And then the last piece was the enforcement. Of course, any form of retaliation is going to be zero policy. So whether it's for the adult or student.
I think that concludes our section 6. Section 5, I guess it is. And that concludes our policy section, board policy, this one. So Finance Advisory Committee update.
I think we have it, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
See the packet that we
Talked
received, yes.
about it, the finance committee is.
Been demonstrated
Tonight.
Okay, so no further report.
Right.
No further report, okay. And then shared services.
We've been meeting a lot.
Yeah.
We're gonna meet again tomorrow. We recently worked on putting together, the different interview committees of staff. So we, sent out the survey to staff to see who was interested. And then we use that information to put together an admin group, which includes both admin from 75 and 120 respectively, but also a group of shared service admin in that group. Then there's a staff group that includes as much as we could from the people that reached out, somebody from kind of every department. And then also a community group of community stakeholders, so, we have them identified now and we're working on putting together the interview schedule. Am I missing anything? We're meeting a lot. And we'll have another update for you again soon.
And our,
The survey results were all received and then posted online, so each of the schools has those posted right on their website. That's pretty easy to find. And I think the next step as a whole board is when BWP comes in to go over the slate of candidates and then give us some kind of training on the interview process.
can I ask for clarification on that? Because I know we approved a special board meeting, but then I got an invite and then it canceled and I was confused. So can we clarify just so we're all clear on when is the special board meeting that BWP is presenting that? November 6th. Okay. Because I didn't know if it was just that the Google request got canceled. I was a little confused and
What happened is that the committee initially, when they met, there were several different dates, so I put them out there, populated them and knowing like what's placed in this placeholder.
Okay,
But once they met again and said, okay, no, we defined the dates, we went back and then we canceled a few that said, okay, we're no longer gonna use this.
okay,
But we are sticking to November 6th as the date, and then you're gonna have that Wednesday and then that Saturday, or I think it's, Wednesday or Saturday, one of those 2 dates, and then it kind of trickles in.
Okay.
November will be busy here,
okay.
also.
What time was that meeting to?
On the 6th,
6 o'clock.
5:30 to 7:30 on Wednesday, November 6th. It'll be with BWP and we'll get to hear all the candidates.
Okay.
Or at least what they hear.
Please, the slate of candidates.
And then there's lots of stuff going on the week of our next board meeting in November, because then I think there's interviews and dinners and more things, and then we go to the conference. Well, I think it's like every night that week, there's practically something. So, okay. Thank you for that. And I'll clarify so that I make sure I have the dates correct with Anna afterwards, so that I make sure my calendar is clear, because I don't want to get confused on that, but we won't take up time here. Okay, community, was there anything else? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I think that's everything, please.
You'll keep us formed
Yeah.
of something.
Yeah,
Since there'll be lots of involvement.
yes,
They're kind of the most
Yeah.
important things right now.
yeah, for sure.
Community outreach.
No report.
To report, okay. Representative updates, start with the STEAM Foundation. We have our, I think I reported last time, we're doing a trivia night at Tight Head, instead of doing that at the races like they've done in the past couple of years. That is on Friday, I think it's November 8th. Those are all out there, and all of the QR codes and everything are all over online and out and everything. So if anybody would like to come, this year it's being done a little bit differently. The ticket price is lower. It gets you the trivia. You can actually buy for I think they call it unfair advantage if you want to submit a trivia question. And then they have a food truck that's there with burger and fries and drinks. And so they are not including that with the ticket, but that's why the ticket price is a lot lower. But it's all there, and then a share of the proceeds will come back to the STEAM Foundation as well. So encourage everybody to participate, or if you have a business and know that you want to donate something or to get sponsorships or anything else, let me know and I can pass it along to the right people.
Oh, are you going to break the bad news?
No, I'm aware.
Okay.
I'm aware that I am not able to be there that night because I have another event with all of you, but that doesn't involve, I don't think that's the one that doesn't involve everybody. I think that only involves the three of us. So,
There's the
yes.
first round of superintendent interviews that day, the
Right.
first round with us.
but I think ours should be concluded so that I can get over there for half of it. I don't need to play trivia, and that's fine. And I've already advised them, since we only have 6 board members right now on that committee. Yes, I'm not going to be there that night, but they know that, but thank you. That's one of the conflicts I have, and I wanted to make sure I didn't reserve a time and not do something based on a scheduled change that I didn't accurately get, because I don't do Google Calendar and I manually put them all in places.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, I encourage everybody to participate and get involved with that if that's an interest to you. This is a parents, adult-only event, obviously being at Tight Head Brewery. This is not a family-friendly event. All, I don't know if there's any, because I think you said the next meeting is not until.
Yeah, the next meeting is December 4th. I did just read through the last board packet for the, executive board. I just noticed on there that it said D75 and 120 are no longer gonna provide snow removal services, so just thought I would update it.
That it means. Great.
And Eric, the executive board or the board meeting on Thursday, I know it's time to make you mentioned they're gonna talk about where they're at. with this superintendent.
Okay,
So I will give you that, I can share back. Okay.
I think, yeah, the next exec board meeting is this Thursday.
Yeah,
correct?
that's the, yeah, Thursday morning.
Alright. And then last but not least, village liaison, anything to report?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention a couple community things that are going on. So Halloween is coming, so trick or treating is 4 to 8 on Halloween. And then each year, there's a coat drive for vets. That's coming up October 1st through December 1st. So either new or kind of mildly used coats can be dropped off at the village hall of the police department. And it's also Toys for Tots. And that's October 1st through December 1st. So new unwrapped toys at the village hall, the fire departments and the police department. And then it's that time of the year where leaves pick up starts October 21st until December 2nd. And the tree lighting has been moved to December 7th, which is a Saturday.
And it's gonna be in Cortland Commons, right?
Right, at Cortland Commons versus at the,
Playground under construction.
yeah, right,
Portland Commons, that's.
so it's from
It's the
3
new
to
concert
7.
venue across from.
Okay.
And I know that we have 10 minutes before Georgie has to leave, and so thankfully, we're at the perfect time that we can see if we can try to get through our votes here. Is there anything that anybody would like to remove from the consent agenda? If there's not a general consensus, now is the time to state your position. If you want anything either brought back for a future discussion or pulled out of the consent agenda.
Yep.
Speak now, hearing none. Okay. I move that the consent agenda be adopted as presented.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Itzke.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Carl.
I,
Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier, aye. Durin, absent.
Moving on to the board action items, I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the estimated aggregate tentative tax levy for the year 2024 as presented.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Carl.
I,
Itzke.
Aye.
Durin, absent. Pelletier, aye. Aguirre.
Aye. I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to adopt the resolution authorizing the notice of a public hearing for levy year 2024 as presented.
second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Carl.
I,
Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier, aye. Durin, absent. Itzke.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
And this is where I'm just a little confused because this action item actually says to approve the levy, but I thought we were only approving the resolution for the supplemental levy. Was the actual levy that we're? Because I thought we weren't doing that till next month.
the way it's written.
Because it says to accept, to approve the supplemental levy. But, or is it to approve the posting of the levy?
The motion, she's talking about the supplemental levy. The motion says,
It says to approve it, but
Should be.
shouldn't it be the resolution or to post it or? Because we're not, that was my question.
It would be to approve, well, I think at this point, it is for your consideration, we'll be bringing it next month. So.
So it should be adopted.
So should it just be to approve the resolution or is it the posting of it? Because I think we're posting it, right?
We don't.
No, okay. So do we table this one for next month?
Yes. we
Well, if you
present it
change
now
approve to authorize.
for consideration and then next month we'll see.
So we're considering it, but we don't need to vote on considering it,
No.
right? Because we're
No.
actually adopting it would be on next month's. Okay.
Which one was that again?
This is the supplemental levy. So that would be for next month. So we're not gonna vote on that one today. We're basically tabling that for next month.
Yes.
Okay, that was my thought. I just wanted to be clear before we do a roll call vote.
And then for the, I guess, for the levy, the notice of public hearing should be for the tentative levy.
Which includes the supplement.
I need you to say that again. So
Let's look at the first three.
Yes.
Estimated aggregated tax levy.
So the first one, we
That's
said the aggregate tentative, that was
Yeah,
correct.
that's
The
correct.
second one, I think they're saying should have said off, but this is just authorizing the notice.
Yeah, that's correct.
So that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then the third one, we are tabling because we're not actually presenting it.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we have stated it correctly for the first two, and then we're tabling the third. Yeah, okay. And moving along, I move that the Board of Education, sorry, I don't wanna, if
So
honest,
we're just discussing that very first one, and the action is action, board action, 7A. 7A
Doesn't have the word tentative in it, but it has it in when you stated the sentence.
The estimate, it doesn't say the word estimated in the sentence. Is that the
Says it-
I
problem?
think she says tentative.
Tentative in the sentence, but it doesn't say it on the agenda.
Oh, okay, so you can take the word tentative out.
No, we want to add. the word
I think the issue, but we can't
No,
change the
no,
agenda.
Because this is estimated aggregate tax levy. That is the right wording we need to use.
Okay.
Estimated
Okay,
aggregate,
so
not
it's,
tentative.
so we need, do I need to do a roll call vote again on number one?
Just to be clear, I think that's a good idea.
No problem. Okay. Going back to a previous item, I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the estimated aggregate tax levy year 2024 as presented.
Second.
Well, who,
Oh, make.
I think you seconded
Brandon,
it.
yeah.
Do you want a second again? We're just taking out the word tentative. It's still
No,
estimated.
You seconded the first one. I seconded the second one.
No, you seconded the first one and Emily did the second one. It doesn't matter. It just,
No, I did the consent agenda. That's what I did.
he did the
Oh,
consent
that's right.
agenda. Okay,
I just want to make sure you're paying attention, Alan.
do you,
Thanks, Rick.
Second.
okay, Ray seconds.
Okay,
Secretary, please call the roll.
okay, Fingerhut,
Aye.
Rose,
Aye.
Carl,
I,
Itzke,
Aye.
Durden, absent. Billetier, I, Aguirre, absent, or
Okay,
Aguirre,
aye. Okay, so we've already moved past two. We've tabled three.
On the budget.
I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the budget calendar as presented.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut,
Aye.
Itzke,
Aye.
Billetier, I, Aguirre,
Aye.
Durden, absent. Carl,
I,
Rose,
Aye.
I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the following job description as presented. The East District Office Receptionist revised.
second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Carl,
I,
Rose,
Aye.
Itzke,
Aye.
Durden, absent. Billetier, I, Aguirre,
Aye. I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve press policy number 116, second and final reading, and which includes the revision to policy 5:310 as presented.
Second.
Secretary, please call. Yeah, it was George.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier. Aye. Durin. Absent. Hitzke.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
I move at this point that at 8:13, we adjourn into executive session for the purposes of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of the specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity according to statute, and to discuss the minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for the purposes of approval of the body of minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated. Secretary, please call the roll. Or I guess a second. Give me a second.
Second.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Hitzke.
Aye.
Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier. Aye. Durin. Absent. Rose.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Okay. We are going into executive session. Okay, the Board of Education meeting will now return to open session and come to order at 8:30 PM. Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Carl.
Here.
Hitzke.
Here.
Durin. Absent. Pelletier. Here. Aguirre. Absent.
Okay, so now that we're back from our executive session. Hold on, let me pull it from it. Action items that we have, the following closed session minutes were reviewed and are recommended to continue remaining confidential. November 14th of 23, December 19th of 23, January 23rd of 24, February 27th of 24, March 12th of 24, and March 18th of 24. I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve those closed session meetings continuing to remain confidential and recommended to remain in the closed session file.
Aye.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Hitzke.
Aye.
Durin. Absent. Pelletier. Aye. Aguirre. Absent.
And the verbatim record of the audio recording of executive session minutes of November 15th of 22, December 13th of 22, February 21st of 23, March 14th of 23, and April 18th of 23 were reviewed, and I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the closed session verbatim records that I just stated be destroyed as presented after October 22nd of 24.
Second.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Aguirre. Absent. Pelletier. Aye. Durin. Absent. Hitzke.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Okay. So president's prerogative, I wanted to just, like I said, remind everybody, number one, it looks like, did everybody need to sign one of these or was it just me?
No, we all.
Okay, so everybody needs to sign this and make sure to give these to Shane before we leave. So don't forget that. I guess I should have said that, but it looks like she's got hers over there, so we should be good.
Yeah, she loved her.
Good, okay. And then obviously the conference is coming up after we deal with a whole bunch of superintendent stuff. So, like I said, be mindful of those dates. I'm sure there'll be some reminders coming out, and Friday updates will probably have some review of some of that too. So just make sure we've got that, since there's a lot of dates and special meetings to keep in mind, that we all want to make sure for the ones we've been invited to that we can attend. Because obviously, excuse me, not everybody does all of them. So but we will all see you on the sixth for the special meeting to go over the slate of candidates. So that'll be good. Everyone take a look at the III conference, the planning app and calendar thing that Anna sent out to us. It's a good idea to start taking a look at those to think about what you may want to participate in and attend when we go to the conference for those that are attending. I'm sure at the next meeting, while having a lot of other things to go over, we will briefly probably state what things we're looking to attend. So to be prepared for that at the next meeting. That way we can kind of plan accordingly if there's different people want to attend. I know that there's been a few emails floating about, there's always a few different activities and things, and I know that some spots have been secured for some various social activities for those that want to attend. So we'll keep future information on that as it comes there, but I know that between some of the administrators and myself, we've secured a number of spots for some things, fun things to do. So I hope everyone will be able to attend for those that can. I know that, so Michelle is not here this evening, but I know she had reached out to me with a number of questions and ideas of things she wanted to propose for some future agenda items or future discussion pieces. I need to get a little bit more detail. Some of it I've directed her to the administrators to talk to them, to get some of her questions answered, and to get more information, and that I wanted to hear more about some of them. So we can briefly talk, about them, but feel free to bring those types of things to me and we can put those out there. I will table some of this for a future discussion so that Marcella can go through some of that. I know one of her ideas she wanted to discuss she had some ideas and questions about Zoom and some different things to do, and I think to try to make it a little bit more friendly for those that don't speak English. And she had some ideas and more accessibility with, I think, microphones and stuff. We can find out from that. She also wanted to, I think, float the idea, and I told her, I'm sure we need to get past all of the superintendent stuff and then we can talk about, and I wanted to know what other people thought of this and what logistic issues were presented, but she had an idea that maybe we conduct a board meeting in Spanish and with translators or the devices and stuff so that we show our community that don't speak English as their first language that since that represents a significant portion. I don't know how exactly that would work since clearly I don't speak English, so I don't speak Spanish, so I can't run the meeting in Spanish, so I'm not sure exactly how that would go. So I wanted to know more about that idea. I don't think it would be something we could do on a regular basis, but I'm not against the idea of hearing more about it and seeing if this logistically may be something with a short agenda meeting rather than a really long, heavy one, because that would make it take longer, to learn more about that. So I'm putting that out there for food for thought, everyone to think about, since that was brought to my attention. Another one she brought up, which I thought was a good thing for us to talk when we get to book review stuff, which will come later, and I think that's a little more your purview. She wanted to talk about, since on the agenda, we already point to things, and how they are on the, on our short packet summary, it points to what policy items things go to. She had a request that maybe we deal with our agenda and pointing to which student outcome this is connected in line with some of the recommendations from the book that we're working on, and how will this be helping student achievement. So I thought that was an interesting idea that we could brainstorm and talk about. So I wanted to at least put it out there. We don't have to have the discussion necessarily today, but that we could think a little more about that. And I thought a good opportunity would also be when we do our post conference session and we all talk a little bit about, that's usually sometimes we can talk about some different ideas and things we think about and how to implement those. So I thought that might be a perfect time to discuss that further, but I wanted to at least pass that along to everybody in the meantime.
Might even influence the way we do our policy review. We start talking about them more. Connection to the action.
Right. I just wasn't sure exactly how and what she was envisioning or not, but I know we also still need to get further into the book, and maybe some of that could be more clear, and maybe she's farther in the book than I am. So I wanted to point that out, especially for you with the book discussion. that she brought that up, and that's something we can at least think about and then discuss at a future meeting, but not that we need to do any of that tonight.
You're right, though. I think we need to get through December first.
Oh, I agree. And again, I'm not suggesting we put anything else on agendas between now and then, because we've got a lot
We got
going on.
plenty of-
I understand, and just that, but I thought at least if we get the wheels turning, then when we get to next year, maybe we can discuss doing some of that. So I don't have any other particular items because we've got a lot coming up. Trying to think if there was, I guess I will just point out, I guess this could have come in the Board of Education comments at the beginning rather than at the present, but now when I think about it. I did attend the Leader in Me night at MG because I have a fifth grader, so that gave me a perfect opportunity to do that. And it was kind of an extension of what we do at the leadership day that we're all invited to, but it was an interesting way to, we got to make a family flag and we had to pick our favorite, the favorite habit, what of the 7 habits that they have, and put that on there and then draw pictures and do stuff. And so that gave us an opportunity to talk about that. So it was just an interesting way to see how MG is implementing that and doing that. And I wanted to at least talk about that. And like I said, I should have said that at the beginning, but yeah, that's what I thought about. So it was neat to see that going. And it was, neat to see tonight how Washington is putting some of that into place and
These kids are cute.
good things going on. So I don't have anything else. Does anyone else have anything else they want to propose or get for future stuff? No? Or any updates? Okay. I would say, I would like, once we get through some of this other stuff, I'd like to hear an update on the stage at Sandberg and find out where we're at in that process, because I know we're doing lots of things, but I thought
Can't
we
forget
were
about
gonna be
that.
hearing about that again, and I know we haven't had a chance to. So I'd like to hear a little more about that update. That's my request. Other than that, if there's no further business to come before the board, the meeting stands adjourned at 8:40 PM. I move that we adjourn the meeting. Second. Please call. Are all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.